Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you guys my take on the going second pure Tenyi, but with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right on into it. Starting off, of course, we do on 3 copies of Tenyi's Spirit Vashuda. Vashuda has the amazing effect as well as all the other Tenyis that allow it to summon itself if you control no monsters or if all the monsters you control are non-effect monsters. However, all Tenyis also have effects in grave as well as in the hand if you control a non-effect monster. So of course, Vashuda's effect, as most people know because this card is widely used in like Tenyi as well as possibly even some side decks back in the day. But what this card does is, while this card is in your hand or in the graveyard, if you control a non-effect monster, you can banish this monster just so that way you can return one monster on your opponent's side of the field back to their hand. Continuing on, we do run 3 copies of Adhara. Adhara can also summon itself, however, it has the effect of you can banish this card from your hand or your graveyard to take one of your banished Tenyis and add it back to your hand, just so we can get a little bit of extra recursion with the deck, as well, of course, as this card being a tuner, which comes in very handy to make some synchros, which I'll show you guys in just a minute. Up next, we do run 3 copies of Ashuna. Of course, Ashuna, as most people know, is also used in Sword Soul. This card says that when this card is in your graveyard, you can banish it to summon any Tenyi from your deck. This card also, of course, like every other Tenyi, can work from your hand as well. Moving into the smaller of the Tenyis that we don't really run 3 copies of, we do run 2 copies of Shathana. Shathana's effect is that if a face-up non-effect monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your hand or your graveyard and target one of those destroyed monsters to special summon it. Then you can destroy one monster your opponent controls. You can only use each effect once per turn, of course. Then we do run 1 copy of Nahada. Nahada is pretty good, being able to decrease the attack of one monster your opponent controls if that monster is attacking one of your non-effect monsters. So like your Monk of the Tenyi or even Berserker of the Tenyi. So that card really is powerful just to be able to do that. As well as, of course, these cards are level 4, which can occasionally come up. Not that much, but it can. Then we do run 1 copy of Mapura. Mapura has the effect of if a opponent activates a card or effect that targets a face-up non-effect monster you control, you can quick effect banish this card from your hand or your graveyard to negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Continuing on, we do run, of course, the 1 copy of Mermere. Mermere is really powerful because it is a level 7 that is also a tuner. However, its effect says that up to 3 times per turn, you can decrease the level of this monster by 1. Then you can special summon a level 1 mini Mermere token that's water type, level 1 with 300 attack and 200 defense. So you can pretty much level modulate this all the way down to a 4 or 5 or 6, so on and so forth. Pretty much so that way you can just do some more synchro plays or even link plays if you really need to. Continuing on, I do run 3 copies of Lava Golem. Lava Golem, of course, just says that you contribute 2 monsters your opponent controls to summon this card to your opponent's out of the field. Then during each of your opponent's standby phases, they will be taking 1,000 points of damage because of this card, as well as, of course, having part of their board cleared. The only downside to this card is you cannot normal summon or set the turn you activate this card. However, seeing as we're playing Tenyis, that's really not a problem. Continuing on, we do run 2 copies of Gamma Seal just to be able to act as another card like Lava Golem to be able to tribute monsters your opponent controls. Of course, instead of running the Lava Golems, you can swap this out. You can mess around with the numbers. You can run just all Kaijus if you want. However, I really like Lava Golem because it gets rid of 2 monsters as well as burn your opponent. Of course, since this deck doesn't really normal summon, Lava Golem's downside of not being able to normal summon or set doesn't really matter for this deck at all. Continuing on into the hand traps, we run 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. I like how this card is actually coming back into the meta because of Kashtira. However, I really find that this card can sometimes brick. Like, sometimes you'd want to run something like, I don't know, Droll and Lockbird or whatever to stop your opponent. However, Ash Blossom is just really good. Continuing on, we do run 3 copies of Gamma and 1 copy of Driver just to be able to negate our opponent's monster effects, as well as if they try to do something on our turn, like hand trap us, we could always just use the Gamma to summon the Driver, and you can just go into Synchro 8 plays from there. To wrap up the hand traps, we do run 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence because this is more than likely one of the best hand traps this format. Continuing on into the spells, we do run 3 copies of Vessel of the Dragon Cycle. Vessel of the Dragon Cycle says that you can send 1 more monster from your deck to the graveyard, and then if you control a face-up non-effect monster, you can add from your deck to your hand 1 Tenyi monster with a different name from that monster that was sent to the graveyard. And of course, you can only activate this card once per turn. However, it's really powerful just to be able to get you any of the Tenyis you need, as well as send like your Mare to the grave, which you can summon back using one of the Link monsters in the extra deck. Continuing on, we do run 3 copies of Heavenly Dragon Circle. This card is really powerful, being able to tribute 1 more monster and add 1 more monster from your deck to your hand. Or if you tributed a non-effect monster to activate this card, you can special summon it instead, but also negate its effects. Of course, the Tenyi monsters don't really have any effects while they're on the field, so mainly you're just going to use that to link off. However, this card does have a really powerful effect while it is in the graveyard, where you can banish this card if you control a face-up non-effect monster. Then you can add 1 Tenyi card from your deck to your hand, and you can only use 1 effect per turn and only 1 stat turn. Of course, the main target for the search of this is Flawless Perfection of the Tenyi. This card says that all non-effect monsters in the field are unaffected by monster effects, and this card also says that once per turn, if your opponent special summons an effect monster or effect monsters, while you control a face-down monster or a face-up non-effect monster, except during the damage step, you can draw 2 cards. So practically, this is just a field spell that every time your opponent, like once per turn when your opponent summons a monster, you can just draw 1 card, which is absolutely ridiculous. Then to wrap up the deck, we do run 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity, just to be able to dig down 6 cards and add 1 of those cards to your hand, which is just amazing, especially in this deck where it needs a little bit of extra consistency to make it work. But that's going to be about it for the main deck. Let's go ahead and jump right on into the extra deck. Starting off, of course, we do run 3 copies of Monk of the Tenyi. Monk of the Tenyi, yes, it has no effects, but this is the main card you need for the deck because you will constantly be linking off your Tenyi monsters to have their effects in the graveyard, and this is just really good to be able to do that. So of course this card is a definite 3 of in the deck. Continuing on, we do run 2 copies of Berserker the Tenyi. This card is actually still pretty good, even though yes, it has no effect, because it has 3000 attack as well as just being able to get over bigger monsters. But really not too much to say about these 5 cards, besides these are important. These you can cut down if you want, but in pure Tenyis, might as well just run 2. Continuing on, we do run 2 copies of Shaman of the Tenyi. This card says you can discard 1 card, then target 1 worm in your grave, and then special summon it. Also, for the rest of the turn, you cannot activate the effects of monsters special summoned from the extra deck, except Tenyi monsters. This card also says that when an attack is declared involving your face-up non-effect monster, you can target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy it. So this card is literally just extra destruction, as well as being able to summon back your monsters. This is the main card that we use to summon back Mare from the graveyard, or if you have Mare in hand, you can always just discard Mare, summon it back, as long as you have another worm in your grave. Continuing on, we do run 1 copy of Draco Master of the Tenyi. This card says that it cannot be destroyed by battle with an effect monster. If you control no other effect monsters, you can destroy effect monsters your opponent controls up to the number of non-effect monsters you control and or in your graveyard. You can only use the effect of that once per turn. However, this card is still pretty powerful because we can always just pop a ton of cards that our opponent have, as well as it is a link 3, which will help us to get into access code to help end games. So even if you just go, let's say, so of course that means that you can use stuff like Draco Master the Tenyi, maybe a Shaman, just to be able to link off into your copy of Access Code Talker to help end boards. Or if you want to cut a Berserker the Tenyi, which I'm thinking about doing honestly, you can even run a copy of Link Karibo or something like that, just to be able to link off one of your Mare tokens to go into Access Code. So really powerful card and could easily be used. Then to wrap up the Tenyi Link monsters, we do run 1 copy of Tenyi Spirit Sahasrara. This card says that while you control a face-up non-effect monster, monsters your opponent control cannot target effect monsters for attacks. Also, your opponent cannot target effect monsters on the field with card effects. Quick effect, you can target 1 effect monster your opponent controls, special summon 1 Tenyi Spirit token that is a worm light level 4 with 0 defense, and the attack becomes equal to the targeted monster's original attack, so therefore you can just make pretty big tokens just to be able to clash with whatever monsters your opponent have. Of course, to finish off the links, we do run 1 copy of IP Masquerena. We do also run 1 copy of Unicorn to pair with the Masquerena, as well as 1 copy of Access Code Talker, just to be able to help end games pretty quickly. Moving on into the Synchro monsters, we do run 1 copy of Draco Berserker of the Tenyi. This card says that when your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can banish it. This card also says that if this attacking card destroys an effect monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, this card also gains attack equal to the destroyed monster's original attack, and it can make a second attack on a monster during this battle phase. You can only use each effect of Draco Berserker the Tenyi once per turn. Then of course you do own one copy of Borlode Savage Dragon to be able to place counters onto this card as well as increase an attack and just be an Omni-Negate that is just really powerful. Then to wrap up the extra deck, I personally run one copy of Yazi, Evil of the Yang Zing. This card's main effect is that you can target one Yang Zing monster you control and one card your opponent controls and destroy them. So of course your main target of course will be Yazi and whatever monster your opponent has. Then this card says that when this card you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, it's into the graveyard, you can special summon one worm type monster from your deck in defense position. So this card literally just allows you to have access to any worm in your deck, which is just really amazing. So that's going to be about it for the video, guys. Be sure to leave a like, comment down below what you guys think of the deck profile, as well as if you'd like to see a duel with the Tenyis, because I'd really like to do one of those for the channel eventually. Without saying too much, also be sure to check out my Twitter down in the description below. But with that being said, that's going to be about it. See ya. Sahasrara,